Good evening. Yes. 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 Good evening. Good evening. You in the back there? Good to see you. Good evening. Yes. Good evening. Good evening, sir. Sir, good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, sir. Good evening. Good evening. It's very good to see you all here. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Yes. Good evening. Good evening. Yes. Good evening. Yes. Good evening. Good evening. Yes. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good eventide to thee. I bid thee welcome. I bade thee welcome. Love bade me welcome. Folks, we have several topics to discuss today, and I'm just going to get started. Okay, we have methods, we have ideas, we have modalities, we have methodologies, also known as Monserio corpondits. All right, so this is something that I would not normally start a presentation with, because quite frankly, we are here for, ideas of temporality, ideas of togetherness, ideas of sort of virtual networking, ideas of advice giving, ideas of mutuality, ideas of spontaneity, ideas of experimentation, ideas of, just like ideas of ideation, and, just like ideas of what might have been and ways that could potentially manifest of what could be. It's simple. We've heard it all before. It's cyclic, and we know it. So, welcome. I bid thee welcome. I would like to start talking at first about some sorghum cultivation techniques. So when you're thinking of sort of square or rectangular distributions, there are certain allowances that can be made, and there are certain texts that can be, mined from the depths, from the archives of the subterranean chambers in the Gothic French cathedrals that I have particularly found myself availing myself of the various sources therein, and the archivist was helpful enough to transcribe this for me. And again, this was taken from some of the source material laid down by Ptolemaios the Santherian Tendins and Paratorcan Sashalini Volant Kalasmene Porti Manakalan Shortkinat Ponansamin. You should write that down. Pause it, go back. I don't have time to repeat myself. I'm sorry. It's dinner time, motherfuckers. We've been in training for millennia now. It's time to make these 2 days worth it. It ain't about the food, it's about the mood. That's what Spud was always telling me before he went up to fill the great pustule in the open palm of God, reaching down to impart just a little something as he plucks up the best among us. Why do we play? For them. What do you want? The glory of the game. And who's this about? Us. The time of waiting has passed. Now is the time for gaming. Now is the time for gaming. If we fall for his skull, now we have nothing. It's just like practice. Remember what you learned. Stay light. Roll with it. Visualize the goal. Compliment the cabbage. Remember the host. Back to business. This is America's sport, and we are America's team. We either show up and are tailored, or we're not Pharisarion, not at all. The sacrifices or there's no prayer. This was the place going to show. It's about over the next invented, so it's just out. So it's So, categorically speaking, though, we can all agree on a semblance of mutually agreeable stimuli, conceptual networks, semiotic interrelations that can form a matrix, visual, tactile, olfactory, auditory, something that we can all agree on. We call it reality. Okay. I gotta stop playing around with this stuff, folks, because we have something of grave importance to discuss tonight. And that's the prevalence of cool boys with pool toys. It's the prevalence of cool dudes in loose moods, okay? It's the prevalence of, honestly, it's the prevalence of Blue's Clues on booze cruises, okay? We have to stop programming such nonsense for people that are trying to indulge in raucous bacchanalia. And I don't think I'm alone in saying this. I think that people have been shouting this from the rooftops for years. And quite frankly, I am sick of it. I am sick of the institutionalization, the monetatorialization, of the interior-colonization, of the comparison It's claymation, though. And there's actually, I watched a claymation improv dramedy that was delivered by Henrik von Liechtenstein the 14th. Look it up, usite.porn.jizz. It's not as dirty as it sounds. I'm sorry. Sorry. I'm just so sorry. But back to the concept of interiority, right? The interiority of humankind, the interiority of, exteriority, the exteriority of intrinsic interrelations is something that I honestly love. I just love it. I just love it. I absolutely love it, and I absolutely love it, and I absolutely love it. Lay us nearer, brother, nearer, for my hands are growing cold, and thy presence seemeth clearer when mine arms around me fold. I am dying, brother, dying. Soon you'll miss me in your burn, for my form will soon be lying 'neath the ocean's briny surf. You all may remember that from Creedence Clearwater Revival's first album. I think that was John Fogerty on the bass clarinet. I got some news. Jules Rule. Doodle a jeweled dude playing with Huey Lewis and the News. Accrued ooze from Tom Cruise. Some dude chews the accrued ooze from Tom Cruise. Terry Crews leaves clues for a ghoulish booze cruise. Do we eschew rude dudes that send nudes? Indubitably. But you can use glue. You can use glue to shoot stew through a blue tube, okay? You can. Don't let other people tell you otherwise. There's a lot of conventional wisdom floating around. There's a lot of subjectivity of fact, and there's a lot of subversion of dominant narrative paradigms, which is not always a bad thing. In fact, it's often a good thing. But when it comes to booze cruise tube spooling and blue oozing, there are certain things that are indisputable. And I talk about CBD a lot, right? I talk about CBD all the time. I think it's very, very good, and I don't actually know anything about it because I have never ever done it, and that is okay because that is okay, 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 that is okay because that is, it is okay actually. So I keep singing all of these Creedence Clearwater Revival classics. You guys are probably dancing in your seats, all right? But we're here at a symposium, and we're here for extreme rigor, all right? We're here for extreme rigor because we tolerate nothing less, folks, all right? This is a world that is defined by productivity, all right? And efficiency and synergistic behaviors that need to be maintained in the workplace, okay? I will fire you. Ten things the audience should feel. Go. Joy, confusion, disorientation, empathy, identifying with sentiment of the show, desire to express love for cherished people, empowerment to create and collaborate, reflection on social rituals, citizen acceptance of number 10 is blank. But those are some of the axioms that we're working with. We should have dinner. You and me. We should cook for each other. We should break bread. We should bake bread. We should bake bread and break bread. Okay, because we'll socially distance. We got the crust, we got the extra virgin olive oil. It's gonna be good. All right, I'm just saying it's gonna be good, and I'd like to see you there if you feel empowered to come. If you don't, it's an overwhelming time. You're like, ooh, why would anyone feel empowered to do anything? I think it's broken. Thank you very much. Katharine Hepburn up next.